Welcome to Condition Red Radio. My name is Philip Johnson of Corvus Combatives. I'm here with my co-host Josh Beal of Offensive Industries. Hey guys, if you were digging that intro music, that is from our friends Del Bombers, and the name of that one was La Pistola from the album Life is Pain. Today we are excited to be in the studio with none other than soon-to-be world-famous Ed Calderon of Ed's Manifesto. Ed just came off the Joe Rogan podcast, so that's a huge deal. So if anybody's listening to this and you're not sure who Ed is, and I don't know why you'd be listening to this podcast if you don't know who Ed is, but if for some reason you don't, I would check out Joe Rogan's podcast. I believe it's 1302. That gives you a great overview of Ed. And then you can come back and listen to the rest of this because hopefully we're going to fill in some gaps today and get a little deeper into some subjects. So with that, Ed, if you don't mind, if you would introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your background.
First off, thanks for,
Dude, we are so excited to have you here.
Invitation.
It's crazy.
Yes. We've been, we've known each other for a while, so it's, pretty cool for you guys to invite me on. It's,
so when we put this podcast together, we were like, okay, we're going to do a podcast.
It's going to be the first one we have.
We're like, who are we going to get? And we were like, just before we even thought, we're like, okay, we're going to have Nigel, we're going to have Ed, we're going to have Eli. There's like immediately we had a list of people just flown off the head. And I think that you were actually number one.
I really appreciate it. As soon as you said, as soon as I told you that I was coming out here, it's like, you want to be on? It's like, yes. Please.
Awesome.
So a little bit about myself. I grew up in Mexico. I was born in Tijuana, Mexico, which is a pretty interesting city to kind of grow up in. I went into law enforcement down in Mexico back in 2004, and basically got to experience most of the the initial parts of the drug war down there, doing counter-narcotic work, counter-organized crime work for the Mexican government. I went into that job for, basically there's not a lot of options for kids my age back then. This is a post 9/11 economy, so it was pretty, brutal. I was studying medicine before I went into it, and there was not a lot of options. So I saw an ad in the paper, and they wanted, young, unmarried 20-year-olds with no kids. That was kind of like some of the prerequisites,
Precursors for the whole thing.
Yeah, basically cannon fodder, And language skills were a plus. So a lot of people have been asking about my English, how I have such, clear English, and it's because I've been working on it for a long time.
Right.
When did you start working on it?
As soon as I got into government work, and I realized that the better English I have and without an accent, the better it's going to be as far as an asset for that type of work. A lot of the work that I did, I used to go get on phone calls with people and listen to phone calls and talk to people, and I had to make them, believe that I'm, from California. So,
bro.
so I had to really work on the accent, and and just as a discipline thing, anybody that works in a specialized field of any kind and doesn't have language skills, usually, that's kind of half-assing things, and so it's something I really worked on myself. So, I went to work in this weird field for 12 years, and got to experience some of the really horrible parts of that war. And politics changed like they always do. And all of a sudden, some of my bosses were people that we used to investigate for ties to the cartel. So,
shit.
So, I decided to call it quits,
Yeah.
And my skill set and experience base is pretty unique. And I realized after a few months that it's something that I can, show people and teach people that need it and on this side of the fence.
Most definitely.
So that's what I've been doing for the past 4 or 5 years, kind of making my way through the training community, sharing some of my stuff freely, really putting an effort in being as open with the information as I can, even though a lot of people don't like that online through my social media accounts, and basically trying to inspire change through open source information of the nature that I show people.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's one thing that I was always like, you could learn more by just browsing through Ed's Manifesto on Instagram than you probably could go take somebody else's course. They're going to tell you this. He's just giving stuff away for free. It's crazy.
Yeah, you don't even got to pay for it
all the time. Yeah. So there's and
unless you take one of his classes,
when you actually
you
do
get
take
extra.
one of the classes, you're going to be like, wow, it's so much deeper and there's so much
Fucking
more.
mind
But you're getting
blown.
a lot of stuff just for nothing right up front, just through social media.
And a lot of people don't do that. I mean,
Well, I mean, I get why people are guarded with some of the information.
Yeah.
But I'm always, direct and blunt. I've had people be alarmed by some of the stuff that I show. An example of this, I did an article for an interview for Recoil Off Grid, and I had a dog in a picture that was barking at a guy that was trying to free himself from handcuffs. You would be surprised by the type of people
We'll have to blur that out later.
kind of commented on that. They thought that I was giving away too much.
really?
That dogs being utilized for enhanced interrogations was a secret of some sort. And you have to realize that the first time I ever saw a Belgian Malinois in my life was at a cartel safe house, and it just got done eating a guy's leg as a torture method, right? So
They are good at that.
main thing I always try and tell people, if you consider something secret or sensitive or some secret
Something
knowledge,
to be guarded.
if it's some sort of secret knowledge, usually it's untested and usually it's bullshit. Most of the stuff that is out there is
It's
open
been
source.
around for a while.
It's been around for a while, and people know it. Maybe not a lot of people make an effort to collect it and disperse it, but it's out there, right? So when I show somebody, hey, I don't know, you could put a shank inside of a banana, and stab somebody with it, and the banana's going to basically crumble around the shank. Something that people are, oh my God, it's horrible. Why would you show somebody that? Because it
needs to be known.
It needs to be known. It's been used out there, right?
That shit's
So
out
why
there.
not, show it to people? It's to be aware of. But you're inspiring people to do it themselves. If we take that attitude that you're educating the criminals, they know their shit already.
Right.
Fuck yeah, they do.
So if it's surprising or alarming to some people, I always tell them this: you need to get out more. And you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised at the level of some of the people that are alarmed by it, as far as the training and the high level government services that some of these people provide, and they're alarmed by some stuff that I learned from 15-year-olds on the street. Right. So that's the main reason for me being so open with it, is to try and create a change in attitudes and, conscience about this type of stuff. If we're practicing to face a Cold War era enemy when it comes to defeating handcuffs or zip ties, that's one thing. But a lot of the stuff now that criminals use to tie people up and to drug them has changed a lot since that, right? So some people are training for 1990s level, abduction scenarios. And the enemy right now went to school, is a product of evolution. I always call it evolution in the dark. You might be training for somebody that's going to put handcuffs on you, but not somebody that's going to use a modified form of adhesive to put you into restraints, right? Or somebody's going to slap a glue mousetrap on your face.
Yeah, that might have been one of my favorite and most like, what did you say? He did a what? And he's like, yeah, mousetrap across your face.
On the face.
Yeah.
I was like, well, that's...
If you don't start
That fucking
struggling, we don't put
sucks.
any air hole. We won't put any air holes on there, right? So it's stuff like that is the stuff that I show people and I expose people to. And I know for a fact that it's changed attitudes and mindsets, and it's built industries around it. And, people are making things kind of based off some of the concepts and the mindset that I've kind of propagated out there.
Guilty.
And I love it.
Yeah.
You know, people ask me all the time, like, "Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that?" I love that people are changing the way they think about things and the way they carry things, and the fact that some people are carrying around, they're not carrying around $500, $600 things.
Nope.
They're
Shit you can throw away is way better.
You know, they're carrying around small, minimalistic things, and they're, you know, I always have the saying, there's nothing wrong with being small. You can do big things when you're small. You know, that's the mindset, attitude is. I think that to me has been one of the bigger achievements. Just changing things. You know, when you change things on our side, and when I say our side, you know. If somebody's a bad guy, if somebody's a predator, you know, they have their school. It's a school they go through all their lives. But on our side, not a lot of people can go out and gain some of that experience. But we can change our attitudes. We can change the ways we do things. And
The mindset that we look at stuff.
Right. That's another thing that is like, I think you see it a lot, especially, I'm not like picking on anybody or, you know, but America specifically, people are, and I talk about this with Josh, like every time we have a phone call, people are more driven by hardware than they are by software. So people are like, I got the coolest gun, I've got the coolest knife, I got the coolest this, but you don't have any software to really back up what you have. Yeah. So I would much more rather face Joe Blow, who has zero training and has a $6,000 awesome tactical folder, than I would see Ed with a dirty, rusty fruit knife coming towards me. It's a totally different animal, because one has the software and the other one's just got the hardware and nothing to back that up with.
And doesn't know how to fucking use it.
Yeah, so. There's always, you know, I always tell people you know, there's a difference between owning a plane and being a pilot. You know, a lot of people buy things as a protection amulet more so than a weapon. You know, I'm gonna buy this, you know, gun. I'm going to buy 5 guns, 6 guns, which I mean, God bless people.
Easy.
Yeah. You know, I'm totally for people owning a lot of guns, and I love guns. And, you know, I recently got in an online argument with some people that asking for more gun control. And usually the people that ask for gun control have never lived in places where guns are very much needed to defend yourselves. Right. So, you know, don't let go of those rights. But the amount of hardware people invest in versus the amount of software people invest in that's disheartening for me sometimes when I see people come in with a lot of hardware and not a lot of software. What I mean by software is if you're going to carry something, have the experience with it, so when you do need to use it, you already have something to base it off on, right?
And train with it.
You train with it,
Yeah.
you know.
Know how it functions.
I have a quote here by Musashi that I recently found is pretty good. Teaching people a large number of sword techniques is turning the way into a business of selling goods, making beginners believe that there is something profound in their training by impressing them with a variety of techniques. This attitude towards strategy must be avoided, because thinking that there is a variety of ways of cutting a man down is evidence of a disturbed mind. In the world, different ways of cutting a man down do not exist. That's Miyamoto Musashi, one of the greatest swordsmen that ever lived. And, you know, if you haven't read this book, The Book of 5 Rings, highly recommend it.
Which is funny enough, because in one lightning round, Josh asked me what my favorite book was, Book of 5 Rings.
Yeah.
There you go. So
with that being said, let's backpedal just a little bit. What was your training like in the police academy and then shortly after
Horrible. If you want to talk about retarded training,
Yeah.
I don't know. There's videos online of guys doing jumping jacks and getting AKs shot around them without any hearing protection.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's the level of retardation that my training was like. You know, the academy that I went to was called a paramilitary academy. So I went in there to be in law enforcement, but all of my instructors were Mexican Army SF instructors.
Gotcha.
So they treated us like human garbage. Hearing protection was I didn't see hearing protection until like a few years into my police career.
So is that like one of those they tear you up to build you down kind of, or tear you down to build you back up kind of things, or
it's a 6-month process of basically elimination. They want to if people are there for the wrong reasons, they want to kick them out or they want
weed
them
out
to
the
quit.
shitheads?
And you're actually under investigation when you're there, right? So. Like we all went through an FBI background check when we're there. So they were looking for priors on both sides of the fence.
Wow,
And
that's crazy.
every now and then you would get one of the instructors come in, just shout out a name, and they would be gone. And later on we would find out they were there because some cartel head sent them there to kind of
As spies and shit.
Oh, nice.
right. So, or we found out they had some sort of criminal background. But it was the training itself was pretty retarded. A lot of running, a lot of marching.
Because that's important, police
Yeah,
work.
of course. A lot of mind fuckery.
Sure.
They would give us dogs to take care of, and then they would have us do something to the dogs later on. They were really. They're really their kind of. I think their main purpose, and I don't think this because later on I was part of the instructor base in that unit, so I can
So you saw the other side of
I
it.
saw the other side.
Gotcha.
I was smarter about it. Some of these guys were just there to fucking be assholes.
Just to be a douche.
Wait, who would join the military just to be an asshole?
But it was pretty retarded. I did. The main things that I got from that experience is that I saw the need to basically be self-taught. So I started educating myself.
Right.
And then I saw the need to propagate what I knew and to find people that knew things and then kind of see the transference. So we kind of, as a group, we kind of became kind of a bit self-reliant in that regard. So when we actually got out and started working, I actively pursued, people to come down and train us down there. So shooting
Were you
wise,
successful with that and stuff, or?
yeah. Eventually, we got to a point where we were invited to Coronado to train with the Department of the Navy, right? And for a police group from Mexico, that's kind of unheard of. And this is coming off the whole Zeta debacle. So the Army wouldn't touch us with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to ask you about later on, but since you brought it up.
Might as well go ahead and hit it.
Yeah, Los Zetas, that's crazy to me. But for somebody that doesn't know about it, could you just go through it and explain what happened?
Imagine a special forces unit of your U.S. Army coming back from a deployment, going into the armory, emptying it all out, and then just leaving the base, and then going to work for a criminal group.
Wow.
Right? That's exactly what happened.
So they just wiped them out, and correct me if I'm wrong, they originally started off as like the enforcement arm of the Gulf.
They were basically a very, very highly trained and expensive enforcement and bodyguarding arm of the Gulf Cartel.
And then eventually they just split off and they became their own.
They realized that because these are School of the Americas,
Yes.
Fort Bragg trained individuals, highly intelligent. These are old school GAFEs. So GAFE is a designation that isn't used anymore. These were legit SF guys. Now SF and Special Forces in Mexico, especially on the military side, on the Army side, it doesn't mean what it used to. These guys were old school, Green Beret certified. These guys were snake eating. These guys knew their shit, right?
And that's a scary thing. They just all got together and they're like, "The hell with this. We're going into business."
They got an money offer, and the money offer was just so they basically, I think the story is that they went to the barracks, emptied out the armory, and drove off into the night.
Jesus. So is that something typical for people that you worked with to just switch sides and start working for the cartel?
So I'll say this: the amount of employment options outside of the government when you are in that type of world are cartel or going hungry.
Gotcha.
Right. So a lot of the highly trained people that would come through the pipeline and then go out and work would get offers, and a lot of them would go work for the cartels. there's not a lot of choices for people like that.
Right.
So there's a large private security industry in Mexico, but it's mostly handled by the military. So people that retire from the military go into that line of work, and there's no space for people from law enforcement in it. So it's a weird environment, and it's common for people to turn ex-cops to turn cartel. The current head of the New Generation Cartel, which is one of the bigger cartels in Mexico, is a former state cop. So
No shit.
Wow.
that's that's the trend,
Huh.
and along with that, all their training, all their experience, all their know-how, all their knowing ins and outs, and having people within the police forces that they used to work with to kind of infiltrate and influence, and that's how you see these cartels just grow and influence and become monsters.
That's crazy. So with that said, and there's so much I don't want to say turnover, but so many people that flip-flopping are being paid off or influenced, or originally, just like you said, people from, when you originally went in, people that were placed there by cartels. What's it like? How do you mentally prepare to go to work every day and be like, oh, my boss could be being paid off by the cartel. This guy next to me might shoot me in the head because somebody paid him off to do this. The people you're supposed to trust, you don't know if you can.
You're basically your friends and your family.
There was
your brothers.
There was a golden age. That's where the main body of our work, the positive work that we did. During this time, all of us had confidence exams placed on us. And by confidence exams, I mean a whole series of filters that they provided to us that we had to go through to be able to work there. And as long as all of us went through it and all of us passed, we could work there. And that provided me with a lot of confidence to do the work that I did. And because I was working with people that
went through all the same tests you did. Yeah.
So polygraph exams every 3 to 4 months, drug testing whenever they wanted to, follicle to piss,
random and shit,
follicle to piss to whatever, background checks, random house visits, random psychological examinations, peer reviews, all this type of stuff. I remember, trying to pull my hair out because it was fucking stressful going through all that shit. But after a year and then working with some people that went through the same thing with me, and just being able to say, you know what, all these fuckers went through the same thing. We can work.
It made it easier.
Yeah. And this is the time that we had Lieutenant Colonel Lizaola with us, right? So he was he was our Dr. Frankenstein. Basically, he was the one that formalized the whole method that we utilized in that region to pacify stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that helped out a lot. But eventually, with all good things, somebody somewhere got canned from the group because he couldn't pass a polygraph exam, and took the government to court and won.
Fuck.
And everybody that got fired over polygraph exams or background checks and stuff like that, it was declared unconstitutional.
Oh, yes.
And all these guys started coming. And all these guys started coming back. That's how I got a boss that was under investigation. And I was like, you know what?
That's crazy.
Can't work here anymore.
Yeah, dude.
That is absolutely crazy.
No, but that's the thing. You'll hear that every single guy that I work with will say the worst enemy of law enforcement in Mexico is human rights. That's
I can understand that. Yeah.
The claims of torture and cops being evil and torturing people and stuff like that. We can go into that. But the main thing is that most of the criminals come out of all of these cases because they say there's human rights were violated in some way, and these guys have a lot of power, and that's how they get out of most of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a revolving door.
So does the cartel guys, do they receive training, or do they just, is it like OJT, here's a gun, go do this job, and then figure it out along the way?
It depends. There's levels. There's levels to all of it.
Okay. So there's like a ranking system then.
Yeah, there's levels to all of it, and different cartels operate differently in different parts of the country. So you'll see Mad Max level tanks made in some metal shop somewhere in central Mexico being utilized. but you don't see those in more affluent parts of northern Mexico because they wouldn't fit in the environment. So you see more discreet stuff, you know. The training some of these people get, you know, there's personally, like I've researched some of the stuff that went on in Baja and TJ specifically. There was a cartel, and there's remnants of it still, but it isn't what it used to be. And most of the brothers that used to run it are, you know, dead or in jail. The Arellano Felix cartel is a pretty fascinating cartel to kind of study. The amount of influence these guys had, and the amount of, you know, basically how they changed the game as far as how, you know, cartels work down there was pretty fascinating. They immediately saw the potential of upping their game by training their people, right? So the whole trained Sicario image that a lot of people have from watching that movie, the whole image of this guy, this highly trained individual working for the cartels and stuff like that, that comes from that era of cartel influence.
See, that makes more sense.
There's not just rumors, but confirmed, you know, things that they would bring in specialists from Israel to train some of their, you know, hitmen, right?
Wow.
And they would have underground. I actually posted a video of one of these underground shooting galleries that they would have, like under some of the affluent houses. They would have shooting ranges underneath to train their guys, right? Soundproof, air conditioned, like better than any shooting gallery or shooting range at a police academy in the region, right? So these guys knew their stuff. So they started investing in the training some of their cartel sicarios had, right? Not just on the shooting side, but also the, they would have people show them how to investigate, how to stalk, that type of stuff. There's also rumors of former IRA fighters coming into Baja to train some of their people.
Nice. So just like IEDs, explosives, like improvised explosives.
Having guns in a place inside of a security checkpoint, so they would go in and pick up the gun and use it, and then get out, and how to get around or avoid any sort of forensic technology from like using stuff that, you know, the first time I heard some of the stuff through some of the interviews that I got to witness, and some of the stuff that I got to see written down, how some of the guys would wear like paint suits underneath their clothing, so they would, you know, get a lot of the stuff not on them, right? And how they would wipe the inside of their noses with Q-tips to get rid of some of the gunpowder residue and stuff like that. You know, weird stuff like that you never hear anybody talk about until you see some of the IRA manuals, and you're like, oh, that's where they got this shit
came from.
You know, with all the people you've talked about, like training and stuff like that, and all the people you've covered and things, the one thing that sticks out to me, just because I don't know why it particularly like hit a nerve with me, it's so disturbing, is the Pozole guy.
Yeah.
Dude, that for some reason, like when you put that box cutter up and it said Pozole on it, I was literally like, and people were DMing me like, dude, why does that bother you so much? Because every time you put it up, I put like the little green vomit emoji. Yeah. I was like, there's just something about a 55 plastic gallon drum full of like human remains that have become this like brown stew paste that I just find repulsive, and I can't get that idea out of my head. Yeah, I don't know why.
Yeah, when I saw Breaking Bad and I saw them, you know, try to get rid of a body with a caustic soda, basically, you know, that's where, you know, nobody out there has probably made disappear more bodies than him. Right, he should be in the record, you know, Guinness World Record holder.
Isn't that it's a new category in the Guinness Book of World Record? Dissolve more bodies.
He would get rid of, you know, dozens of bodies in a night, you know, and he would get paid the equivalent of.
It's not funny, but it's crazy. It's just, that's insane.
He would get paid the equivalent of $300, I think, for each body.
Per body.
Disposed.
Those guys make like a couple of grand a night.
He said he never killed anybody.
Right.
He wasn't a sicario. He wasn't a murderer. He would just get rid of bodies because that was his job, you know.
Makes sense.
And there's a lot of families that have, you know, missing family members and brothers and sisters and stuff like that. And still to this day, they like on Mother's Day, it's a pretty somber kind of reminder. Every Mother's Day, a lot of the mothers of missing people gather at the center of Tijuana to protest they want their, you know, they want their sons' bodies back or stuff like that. and you just know they're never going to get any sort of closure because their bodies are
that shit's goo.
gone,
That's
right?
crazy.
In a night, he would get rid of 12 bodies.
How long did this guy operate before they ever got a hold of him?
Years. There's different numbers, anywhere from 10 years to 8 years.
Wow.
So there's no way of knowing how many bodies.
Thousands.
Yeah.
Thousands. Judging from the numbers from the time he was active, the numbers he kind of talked about, and the materials he bought consistently.
Yeah.
He that thousands. Probably in the tens of thousands.
It's pretty amazing and pretty scary all at the same time.
It's very scary. It's not even amazing to me. It's just very scary.
And another thing to kind of think about. This is going on 5 minutes from the border.
Yeah.
Right. So you could see the U.S. from
where that shit was happening.
One of the places he was dumping the bodies.
God.
And there's a link to the U.S. There was a group of people called Los Palillos gangs in Southern California, and they were actually abducting Mexican businessmen that had dual citizenship that were hiding in San Diego from the cartel violence. So they would dress up.
Not very far.
They would they would dress up as ICE agents, federal ICE agents on the U.S. side, and do mock raids on houses.
What
and bring them back down to TJ.
You had video of that, right? Guys lined up outside somebody's house in ice jackets.
Yeah.
Well, you saw the video that somebody posted the other day about the DEA agents, the fake DEA agents.
Yeah. So I've started talking about how criminals they disguise themselves as military and police officers down in Mexico, and they were, oh, that's horrible. I'm glad that doesn't happen here. And
that shit happens here too.
That's happening up there.
Stand by for incoming video.
Yeah.
So as far as that goes, like how is the cartel viewed by the Mexican people? Like, are they happy about the cartel? Do they appreciate the cartel? Or are they like fucking scared of them and hate them?
That's a thing. Just like the U.S. and this coming from somebody that's been up here, living up here for 4 years, 3 years, almost 4 years now. You guys are really segmented as a country. Like I'm from the outside coming into your country, going to California, then going to Chicago, then going to Detroit, and then going to Kentucky, then going to Atlanta.
Wait till you come to Knoxville.
Well, I mean, I'm just seeing how really different all of you are. Yeah. It's like a different country every time you travel. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I love it. It's a beautiful country. I love it. And there's a lot of shit you guys take for granted, but that's on you. But it's the same thing in Mexico. There's a lot of segmentation down there, right? So Southern Mexico is very rural, very poor. Northern Mexico, kind of affluent, very conservative in some parts, very conservative. Central Mexico, more Mexico as a country is more centralized. So that's when where you have all the politics go on, all the schools are, and it's leftist as fuck, right? And that's where all policy gets formed, right? So
of course, that's how it always works.
And then you get places like Sinaloa and Guadalajara, where there's a big pro-cartel kind of populace, because the cartels basically pay for everything. Mm-hmm. So it's a weird mix, man. So there's a giant middle class majority that is silent, and it's against cartels. But it's silent.
But there are other areas where they benefit from the cartels.
Exactly. But there's a lot of people that do benefit from them. There's a lot of rural communities that are poor as fuck. They don't get any sort of influx of money but from the cartels. So why would they plant corn when they could plant poppy,
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of that. And, I had this surreal moment once of, driving down this freeway, and it was a cartel built freeway that was better than the government built freeway we just came off of, right? And seeing a bunch of kids selling fruit barefoot in the corner, and then seeing two Ferraris go into a gas station right in front of them, right, to fill up, and these guys come out with guns and stuff like that. That's the main thing I tell people is that the government says the war on drugs, and the government in Mexico is taking control. Imagine I don't know, Detroit and Chicago and California being owned by a cartel, and the government says we have it under control. Yeah, there's a reason why you don't see any gunships flying over Sinaloa, because they have anti-aircraft capabilities. That's why.
Fuck.
Right? There's a reason.
Fuck.
People are like, hey, Ed, but I saw this gunship shooting at some cartel guys in Mexico. Yeah, I'm not overseeing the law. That's the power. That's a power difference there. Right?
There's a huge reach there, I guess.
Yeah,
That's crazy. I think when people don't realize how much money, how many resources these people have. When you have that amount of money, it's like the sky's the limit.
It's
You're basically your own government at that point, right? You can get anything you want.
And some of them are smart. Some of them invest in people. So careers, schools, immigration processes that were paid by the cartels, having immigration lawyers on this side get basically funded by the cartels to bring people over. So there's, they
like send people to college and shit like that, and then get them into the military and stuff like that.
They're everywhere.
Yeah.
That's how would you,
what fucking scares me.
How would you trace and track that?
Exactly. I mean,
and people. The thing I was, and this is some of the stuff that with a bell. Like a warning people. They view it as a foreign problem. Oh, the shithole! It's a shithole country. Mexico, build the wall. That wall is going to be a little bit too late, because a lot of these are up here.
Yeah,
the influence is up here.
It's already been infiltrated.
The money comes from up here, goes down there. Guns and bullets go down there, not just from the U.S. anymore. Some of the stuff is actually coming from the Middle East. So there's some weird Syrian and Eastern Bloc stuff coming in now. Some of the 90s bought firearms from the U.S. that you sold to some of the South American countries are now coming up. They have machine shops now, so they're printing some of this stuff, and they have CNC shops, so they're making their own lowers. So they're just diversified. The problem is, but the main thing I tell people is, it's not a Mexican problem. It's not. It's a U.S. Mexico problem. Mm-hmm. And that border is an illusion, and it's only respected by
a comfort blanket.
Yeah, it's only respected by law-abiding citizens. Like most law-abiding Mexicans that cross that border with their documentation, you will not have any problems with them. Close that border on the Tijuana side, and San Diego will die economically. Realize that Mexico is the largest consumer of American goods on the planet. Mm-hmm. So our symbiotic relationship is there. And most Mexicans are cool. That's the thing. Most middle-class Mexicans that, live down there don't want to come up here for any reason. That's a silent majority, but you never hear about them, right? But again, that problem isn't the Mexican problem. It's a U.S. Mexican problem, right? So that main thing is that people need to realize that the solutions of just building up a wall and securing it with the military there, that would have worked back in the early 80s, but it's too late now.
Too little, too late now.
Yeah, drone technology, catapults, submarines, tunnels, trebuchets, flying stuff to Canada, and then bringing it down.
And bringing it down.
So you just take your pick, and that wall.
Because you can basically walk over the border from Canada in a lot of spots.
Yeah.
Just backpack in.
That's I think the vibe, at least is what is put into everybody in the state's head is like, so basically you have the cartels and you have a bunch of different factions and they are all going to war with each other over who's going to smuggle drugs into the United States because that's how they're going to prop themselves up. But do you think they're diversifying? Like, do they affect any other countries? You ever see them like, we got America too, but let's move around, see if we can't do some business in Colombia or we can do
Europe specifically.
Europe.
Really? There's a big market for some of these cartels. I actually posted a video of these cocaine packets encased in fake rocks that were caught at the port of entry in Spain, right?
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
And they're like, and I posted, that's pretty ingenious. And somebody said, oh, it's not that smart because it got caught. This was number 58 of a series of loads.
They got caught that time. How many other ones got?
And they only got caught, and this comes from a source that I have that it was actually part of that. They dropped by accident one of the rocks, and they saw a packet in there. I was like, oh. And that's just one way. That's people always. This is the thing that people need to realize. They throw everything at that border to make it cross, and they are already factoring in that the United States will capture or find some of it, It's already factored in the numbers.
It's considered a loss
And
already.
it doesn't affect them at all.
Right. It's like your bottom line when you're like a Macy's department store. You're already going to factor in, like, we're going to lose X amount due to shoplifting. Yeah. That's just a loss leader. We know we're going to lose that, but this is going to be our bottom line. So
the only time you saw a fluctuation of drug prices on the street because of border security was during 9/11. That's the only time in history you saw that. But people quickly caught on that realistically they were just playing upon the fact that people thought it was harder to get things through. But it wasn't. It just wasn't the case, right? So illusion of cost and demand. But realistically, you can see heightened border security during the caravan crisis, and drug prices were the same.
That's nuts.
So that's how you know.
Yeah,
doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter.
At least for them, game and
at least
show.
For them, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So one of the things I see that's like it's kind of leaking into. Like mainstream media, and you see it on like television shows. They'll pop up. Like I saw it on Breaking Bad and a couple of other things. But they're really pushing this cartel, like Santa Muerte connection. I know you know a lot about that. Is there anything like? What would you say about that to people that are interested in what's the semblance here? What is this thing? Why does this exist?
So there's a trinity in Mexico as far as criminal culture. One of them is Jesus Malverde, which is our version of Robin Hood. He was basically a thief that got executed for his crimes, and he was turned into a saint by some of the people in Sinaloa. Shrines to him, right? That's one of the Narco saints. Then there's Judas, Saint Jude, patron saint of lost causes. Sure. Somebody that the cartels adopted him, and most of criminal culture adopted him as well as one of their main saints.
That's interesting.
All right. So, and then there's a few other weird saints out there. Juan Soldado is a pretty classic saint. Juan Soldado was basically a convicted child murderer.
Right.
That from Tijuana. Right. So the story goes, and the interesting part of this story is that my grandmother was alive during this time.
What?
So she experienced this whole thing, and she actually told me some stories about it. So back in I think it was the 40s, late 40s, I think. Juan Soldado was basically a soldier that was part of the army barracks in Tijuana. And during leave, somebody saw him talk to a girl that later on got found raped and murdered, And a lynch mob showed up at the detention center, and they wanted him. Soldiers had to fire on the public. Didn't kill anybody, but just to drive him off. And they back then they had this thing called ley fuga. Ley fuga means we're gonna shoot you. You can run. All of us are going to shoot you, and if you manage to escape this volley of fire, you're innocent.
So it's like a firing squad. You actually got to run away from it. And if you made it, it's like divine intervention.
Yeah.
You get
Pretty fucked up, but it seems kind of legit at the same time.
He didn't make it.
Oh no!
I'd say not.
Overnight, a lot of rumors began to spread that he was actually innocent, and overnight his tomb became a shrine, and candles and offerings started appearing on that shrine. And right now it's like a full-on shrined tomb. People leave plaques that pray to him, right, on it, thanking him. And finally, Santa Muerte, the death cult, right? There's a lot of stuff out there, different varieties of it. There's I call them strains. There's different strains of Santa Muerte out there. The ones that I got to experience were some of the old school Mexico City Santa Muerte versions of it, of the faith, and some of the weird underground, versions of that faith. And one thing they all have in common is that it's basically old school Aztec death worship disguised in Catholic symbolism and worship. So true Santa Muerte, you will always see it concealed or hidden. It's not something you'll see openly kind of shared, right? And it's usually something that is reserved for the lower classes or the desperate. So that's why you see it really popular with prostitutes, people in the military, police, criminals, cartel members, sicarios. It's interesting that the same shrine gets prayed to by two people on opposite sides of that fight.
Totally different spectrums.
And, I get a kick out of it because I've actually been through some of the churches up here in the U.S., some of the Santa Marta churches. People ask me like, hey, have you been to the Santa Marta church in L.A.? Yeah, there's a guy in front of it. That's how you know it's bullshit. What do you mean? So if there's a Santa Marta ceremony being presided over by a man, according to the stuff that I learned from the people that I learned about Santa Marta, that is not how you do it. Everything related.
Wrong flavor of Kool-Aid.
Everything related to Santa Marta ritual have to be done by a woman that has had kids, because that's the closest representation to death that we have in this plane of existence, right?
Wow. Okay.
Right. So there's interesting, because I went through, and again, people ask me, hey, are you a believer in Santa Marta? You kind of push that thing hard. I always tell people it's my version of Memento Mori. If people want to research that, it's my version of a captured ISIS flag, in a way as well.
I can understand that.
A lot of the people that we went against had these shrines to Santa Marta in their safe houses, and then we took all that shit back to the office. Set up our own shrines. The story behind the Santa Marta with the MP5 that I utilize a lot. Mm-hmm. There was a very specific group out there that really wanted us all dead. And we finally caught up to them. And in their safe house, they had this big Grim Reaper Santa Marta in their place. It was shrine. And it had like news clippings with some of our bosses there with, hexes on them and stuff like that. And it had an AK-47 slung on it.
Nice.
So when we got there, we took the AK-47 off and we put the MP5 on.
Fuck yeah.
And we, took a picture with it. It was somewhere. That's a pretty sensitive picture.
Uh-huh.
But it's, but the main thing I learned, like when I got there, when I got to work in one of the groups that I worked in, two of the guys took me to a shrine. It was pretty surreal. Like I just got there, didn't know a lot about these people. And it took me to a shrine that is, and people can go there. It's in center of Tijuana, near the cathedral. And all of the esoteric witches markets and stores and all these Santa Marta practitioners are all based around the cathedral, because that's where they charge up their amulets and their right. So near there's a shrine. There's a shrine with one of the central shrines of Santa Marta in Tijuana. And when we got there, I thought we were going to the church, and then they took a turn, and I saw they had candles and stuff like that. And so they put an offering of candles and a bottle of blue agave to Santa Marta, and they turned over to me and said, "You better say your piece to her, because we want her on our backs, not on our fronts." It's like, oh, okay. And I was like creeped out. I thought they were fucking with me. Later on, I kind of realized it was their way of knowing the enemy. So they adopted this faith themselves, learned about it, because they would deal with a lot of Santa Marta practitioners on the criminal side. And if you didn't know about some of the rituals, some of the ways they mark themselves, there's some specific scarification that they do. And if you didn't have those on you, they wouldn't talk to you. So it was their way of gaining trust and confidence and opening yourself up to some of these people. It's an interesting religion. It has a cult. People call it a cult, but it's a big cult.
But it's growing like crazy fast, right? It's even coming
it's everywhere now. It seems like
in a lot of ways, it's some of the true old school strains that I got to experience, and one of the strains that I was actually initiated in. They initiated me because of the group that I was part of. It was hazing ritual type thing, right? But those
are always fun.
Yeah. But it involved Santa Marta, right? So it was one of the ways they wanted to see if I was, legit or not, So you see a lot of influences from Eastern, ritual magic. Somewhere along the start of the turn of the century, Aleister Crowley actually visited Mexico and stayed for a few years. And you can see some of that influence in Mexico City as far as Santa Muerte.
Wow.
So there's a lot of weird connections. And some of the ways they initiate people and some of the stuff they talk about as far as veils being lifted and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting. But it's one of those things. It's everywhere right now, and a lot of it is emulation or cool factor, or they think they know some stuff as far as what it is. Realistically, it's some of the old school stuff is kind of scary.
Right. So you think like a lot of people now are just kind of like a Me Too, or it looks cool, or it looks scary, so they're going to jump in it, but they have no idea what's behind it.
Yeah, I've been to some esoteric places in the U.S. Where some people are have Santa Muerte shrines, and I look at them and I'm like,
not so much, bro.
Not so much.
Not so
bro.
much.
It's all
Not
wrong.
so much. It's a Taco Bell of Santa Muerte shrines.
No.
So, with everything you've been through and everything you've experienced in your career and in your life, personally and professionally, where do you see the cartel situation in 5 years from now? Like, not only just in the Mexican side, but also in the U.S. Like, do you see it getting better? Do you see it getting worse? Like, where is it going to go, you think, personally?
So maybe I'm gonna put on a tinfoil hat at this moment.
Yeah.
But I've been right a lot.
Is that a question you can't really answer at the moment?
No, I think I've been right about a few things.
Yeah.
And I have a track record. The caravan thing. People were saying that it was the first caravan was gonna go to Texas. I was the only one out there saying it was gonna go to TJ. There's a tendency in history for fiction to kind of guide the way towards reality, right? And you see a current push for the current government to declare the cartels as a terrorist organization type thing, right? And you saw this in fiction in a few places, right? That Sicario film and stuff like that. And every time I see something like that, you see kind of the zeitgeist kind of shift a bit, right? So preparing for something like that. Now,
So is that going to be a thing, you think? Or
there's always a point, a nexus point with the cartels as far as them doing something very big, very public, and very overt, and having the attitudes of the police that are fighting them change.
Mhm.
Now, in numbers, and in cells, as some of these groups operate, they will not only find out where you live and where your family lives, they will turn that against any sort of local law enforcement agency to gain influence and move things around, right? So, people have a lot of faith in law enforcement up here in the U.S., and rightfully so. I've met some federal law enforcement agencies, amazing people, but I always tell them, like, you haven't been up against a large group of these people in your backyard doing what they do.
Unlimited amounts of money.
Yeah, burning
And power.
burning a tractor trailer and just crossing it on the freeway just to fuck with traffic in the area where they're about to do something really big. Having their own cell phone networks, having people that have careers that they were paid for by them influence politics, influence things that happen within your own department. Your nannies turn out to be a cartel funded individual.
God damn.
That type of stuff you haven't experienced yet. And I think as a culture, as a warrior culture, the U.S. has been focused on an enemy that lives across the ocean.
Versus one that's right across the river.
People talk about this whole, send a bunch of Navy SEAL guys down in Mexico and just do your thing. They're going to send a bunch of their guys across that border, go to Coronado, and just wait and start doing their list. That could happen. That's within the realm of reality. They did that to Mexicans, the Mexican SF guys. The Mexican Marine guys have had stuff like that happen where they get tracked down to their houses and get shot at. Right?
So sleeper cells are a thing.
So people are sometimes amazed by my language skills and my life skills and the stuff that I show people. There are people out there way beyond me working on the other side.
Right.
Then people that went through the same training I did and then didn't have the opportunities that I did and they went down and worked somewhere else.
Right. And Americans are thinking about going down there and fighting like some kind of conventional warfare. Yeah. These people have totally had any kind of like the gloves of morality taken off. It's not about me fighting you. It's about, I don't like you, but I know where your family lives. And so when you go to work, I'm going to go get them. I'm going to go get your grandparents. I'm going to get your cousins. Everybody you know is going to be gone by the time you get off of work.
Your fucking dog.
There's no ocean dividing.
There's no safety net.
No. And you can build that wall, but again, tunnels.
Right. And there's not an enemy combatant. It's just like everybody is fair game when they're involved. It's like, let's go after anybody.
No rules.
And this is not being just, pessimistic. Realistically, there's going to come a point when they're going to make a major effort to gain distribution control up here and different facets of that. They already have control in some places. People that don't think that they're in Chicago and California.
They're fucking
rub
stupid.
their eyes in Vegas, Oklahoma, out of all the places I've seen them in Oklahoma, right? Stuff like that. People are blind if they think they're not up here now, right? So, but what happens is they become such a big organization that they need to feed that organization with other means. So that's when you see them go into protection rackets, extortion, prostitution, human trafficking, sex trafficking. They realize, maybe pirated Microsoft Windows technology is going to be something they're going to make money off of now or something, right? Let's start jacking these things and let's start influencing, policy or politics here, and that's how you start seeing this animal start just basically growing, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's where we're going to head.
So you were active for 12 years?
12 years active.
12 years. So if you'd like to talk about it, I think this is awesome, but so you go through this like 12-year stint, and then one day you're just like, I'm out. Yeah. So what was that last day, the day you decided like I'm done? What was that day?
My mom passed away 5 days before I got out of the job. And before she went, she told me, lay down your arms, your war's over. It was the last thing she said, right? And that really screwed with my mind. Things were pretty bad at work by this point, and having that kind of tattooed in my mind kind of really affected me. But I went back to work with a motivated, wanted to make it. Realistically, I really liked my job. I like the people that I work with. I miss it. I'd lie if I told you I didn't miss it. But went to work. And this wasn't planned at all. Like I was thinking about my exit strategy, but not that fast. Went to work, got called into the office, saw a bunch of movement outside. The subdirector was no longer the subdirector. The director was being moved here. This guy was under investigation. All the guys that I used to work with were now under investigation. Maybe I was under investigation. I don't know what was going on. And then I saw some of the new people that are going to be part of the
new regime coming in,
and they basically asked me hey, you want to work for us? And when you say you, do you like you guys or who you work for? And I said, you know what? Yeah, let me think about it. Just let me get some stuff clear in my head, and I'll get back to you. Yeah. You come back tomorrow, and you can tell us, what you want to do. Got out of the office, went straight to the administrative office and printed out my resignation. It was in my mind. It was like it was that. That
was just a switch. You're like, this is done.
Yeah,
I'm
done. Time to dip.
And I left that very day, crossed into the U.S. and I already had the process going, so I never looked back.
So what was the catalyst for you to start teaching after you left?
People being when I was still active, I did classes in the U.S. With people that were interested in the type of stuff I was showing. So I was already my foot was already in the door in the training community. I was showing stuff around Mexico, and some Americans were traveling to Mexico to train with me. And so going back, and word of mouth was already kind of spreading. And a lot of the relationships that I developed with U.S. federal law enforcement and military and some of the NSW guys and just people that I related to during my time active, those kind of activated themselves when I came up here to try and figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my existence. And I started getting it's word of mouth basically.
So was it like an instant thing, or did it take some cooking and cultivating?
It took some time, but it as soon as I got people think that I'm some sort of internet celebrity phenomenon thing. I've been at this for a while, and it's taken a lot of work. I've traveled all over, sometimes on my own dime, to give out free classes to federal guys or to state guys that they didn't get funding for this or that, but they wanted some of this. So I go out there on my own dime. It's been a passion of mine to try and make it worth it. So it was a shit show of a job, and I didn't. There's no pension,
Yeah, no retirement
no
funds.
retirement, no pension. So I want to make it worth it. So that's what I've been doing.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
Keep an eye out for part 2 with Ed Calderon with Condition Red Radio.